Okay, well, I hope that a few more people will join, but we might as well get started because we only have an hour today. So thank you for everybody who is here. Um, I'm Carly Thorstensen. I'm the Heal Cities Campaign Coordinator at the Oregon Public Health Institute, and we're kicking off a series of one-hour learning sessions to highlight some best practices around HEAL topics and share ideas and share resources and workshop some of the challenges that you may be having. These will be some interactive phone calls with a short presentation and then plenty of time for questions and discussions. So the objectives for these are really to kind of help build a peer network among HEAL Cities campaign officials and staff. We want you to be able to come to me and to other HEAL Cities people and experts in the field for ideas and problem solving and really celebrate some successes that you all are having. We want to be able to highlight some best practices around HEAL topics and then again share some ideas and successful strategies. So today, Duncan Hwang has graciously agreed to speak with us on community engagement for place-based initiatives, about his experience with successful strategic visioning and agency accountability. Traditional agency-like community engagement processes often face some barriers that may limit authentic and meaningful participation from communities, especially underrepresented communities. So today we'll be talking about how place-based initiatives can really advance equity through looking at some pitfalls, some recent innovations and strategies, and then some tools that can be adapted to your projects. So before we go into introductions, just a few housekeeping tips and ground rules. I think you all are on mute, so thank you. Please keep that on mute. There is a small group today, and so we will have plenty of time for questions and discussion. So just be sure to unmute yourself if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, or you can enter them into the chat box, and I will relay those to Duncan. Let's see. And then please identify yourself and your city every time you talk. And then we will be sharing slides, and this is being recorded. So we'll share that as well after the presentation. Feel free to ask questions. We'll have time at the end for discussion and working through some questions that you might have. So Duncan is sharing his screen today with his PowerPoint slides. If you're only joining by phone, again, we'll be sharing the slides after the meeting. And just please let me know if you're having any technical difficulties. So I'm not sure if we have anybody just on the phone, but if we could go around really quickly and introduce yourselves. Before I introduce Duncan and get started, please say your name and your city and some challenges that you're facing in your work with community engagement. Oh, and I think we're having some feedback.
Hi, this is Izetta from the City of the Dalles, and I am just trying to learn some more about HEAL Cities and the things that we could maybe work on or implement.
Great. Anybody else like to introduce themselves and let us know what some challenges you're facing with community engagement, or just what you're here to learn about? Oh, Angela is saying, Angela Hindren is from the city of Wilsonville, and she's looking for new ideas. Okay, and I got you, Angela. Great. Okay, great. Well, please, again, feel free to ask any questions as we're going through, and we want to make sure that we have, a robust discussion, and I'll be following up with. We can have more one-on-one time. And why don't we just get started? I'll introduce Duncan. Hwang is our guest speaker. He's Associate Director for APANO, which is the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. And that's a statewide organization that advocates for Asian Pacific Islander communities at the statewide level and serves as a hub for civic engagement and leadership development. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I go back to one more introduction from Holly Thompson? She's from the city of Beaverton. I'm looking forward to learning more about HEAL. Okay, thank you, Holly. Okay, back to Duncan. Duncan earned his law degree from Lewis and Clark Law School and has worked on numerous civic engagement and environmental campaigns. He currently oversees the economic development for the Jade District Neighborhood Prosperity Zone in Portland, which is the neighborhood in which APANO is headquartered. And he's a member of Portland's Vision Zero Task Force, which continues to examine methods for reducing serious injuries and fatalities. As part of his work, Duncan has led an extensive community visioning process and conducted some charrettes in over 5 languages, and where they learned that the overarching community concern in their neighborhood was walkability and safety. So he'll be talking a little bit about that today. So without any further ado, welcome, Duncan.
Okay, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Thumbs up, I think.
Okay, good. Cool, well, I'll get started. So Carly, thanks for that great introduction. So again, my name is Duncan. I'm with APANO, the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. We're a culturally specific organization. We do statewide advocacy, and our key program areas are community organizing, civic engagement, leadership development, cultural work, and community development. So we're headquartered here in Portland's Jade District, which is a East Portland neighborhood. We're focused around the 82nd and Division intersection. We're working on a HEAL initiative that's funded through Kaiser Permanente, and our HEAL initiative is called ABLE, or Asians Building Livable Environments. It's a collaboration between APANO and the Asian Health and Service Center, and we focus on 3 census tracts in the Jade Lentz neighborhoods. These include some of the most diverse census tracts in the whole state. The census tract we're headquartered in is one of the few majority-minority census tracts, and also has the highest concentration of Asian Pacific Islanders in the state. So our neighborhood is about 47% people of color, 55% are considered low income, and about 15% of the neighborhood lives in linguistic isolation. So the in-language outreach is just super important for us. So just a few quick disclaimers before I get started. So I'm going to be talking really about what works in my neighborhood and my community. The strategies and tactics might not work in yours, but I think these are just some good conversation starters to get to better, more authentic community engagement. There's no kind of like magic bullet that any one thing will accomplish kind of authentic engagement. I'm going to be going through some of the challenges that we faced. So, the first section is a bunch of pitfalls. So it's not meant to be a hall of shame for, community groups or public agencies, but it's really kind of like a opportunity to learn and partner. So the third disclaimer is that PowerPoints are super boring, and no one likes to see them in community engagement. So I guess, there's not really a more interactive format when we're doing a webinar, so sorry about that. And then finally, our overall goal at APANO is to work on systems change. So kind of the barriers to authentic engagement is really at a systemic institutional level. So this is kind of to start a conversation about, what would a more equitable system overall look like. Okay, So I'm just going to go through kind of some of the challenges that we've seen. So I think in community engagement, but the timing and the process really matter. So oftentimes we'll see too little engagement, or it's too late in the process, and all the key decisions have already been made, and folks are kind of just looking for a rubber stamp from the community. We'll also provide a lot of input on different public planning processes and not really know what happens to that input because there's no oftentimes mechanism to report back on kind of the decisions that have been made. So sometimes it feels like we're providing input into a vacuum. Finally, agencies just actually really need to coordinate better. Like we've got our share of challenges here in East Portland, and a lot of folks want to do stuff about it, but we'll be working on 8 to 10 different public planning processes at a time, from a transit line to zoning updates to a street redesign. So all of this just is really taxing and confusing for the community if it's not done in coordination, because you can't have a listening session or focus group on everything that needs to be done. It really needs to be more integrated. Challenge 2, so first challenge is really about kind of like the process. Second challenge is really about the community capacity to be able to participate in community engagement. So, just basically the logistics have to be right. So the transportation needs to be provided, childcare, interpretation, time not valued. So we'll see community meetings that are 2 hours long downtown at 9 a.m. That's not going to work for folks in our community that aren't able to get downtown and have jobs. So, but the logistics is just kind of a basic building block of what you need to do right. And then kind of moving on to deeper level engagement. There's just a lot of content expertise and process knowledge to really meaningfully engage in decision making. So I think part of our role at APANO is to really kind of help guide community members through kind of the bureaucracy. A lot of our transportation decisions are made at JPACT, which is like the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, which is a bunch of different regional leaders in agencies and electeds that come together and make decisions. So, I think a lot of these decisions are made in kind of arcane bodies that are unknown to community members. So how do we kind of build that capacity to engage on that? Another challenge that we've seen a lot is agencies will come in and talk about the issue that they want to talk about, but aren't really listening to what the community wants to talk about. So last year we did like a focus group on the introduction of electronic fares, or the e-fare system in TriMet, which is our local transit agency. And during these sessions, people weren't super interested in electronic fare, but they were talking about how expensive transit is, right? So I think you really have to tailor your message and accept kind of the input that comes in. Folks might not want to talk about whatever you want to talk about at that time because they have bigger, more pressing concerns. Next is really kind of just the process of engagement takes a long time. We're working on a lot of projects that won't see construction for 2 or 3 or 4 years. So I think that time is really challenging to make a sense of urgency around something that won't happen for 4 years from now, 3 years from now. So like, how do we structure engagement to keep it engaging and effective over a multi-year time frame? And then finally, you know, we see a lot of over-reliance on consultants. So I think, you know, a lot of folks on this webinar are from agencies, and I would encourage you to avoid trickle-down community engagement as much as possible. Because what happens is, you know, you'll bring on a consultant to do engagement, and, you know, it's all kind of budget restrained, and, you know, basically if a community gets this question of how much community engagement will X dollar amount get me, which is something that I've, you know, literally seen happen with us. And at the end of the day, the consultants leave, but, you know, the community members and the agencies are still there. So, you know, there's no, you know, better approach than to build those direct relationships with community members on the ground and not over rely on consultants. I can stop here real quick to see if there's any questions thus far. No? Okay. Finally, the last challenge that, you know, I've really observed in community engagement is kind of an over-reliance on digital media. So, you know, I think the digital divide is really real. And the people that are most impacted by kind of the health disparities that we want to work with oftentimes have the least access to online surveys or emails. And, you know, for example, when we do community engagement, we actually do it person to person in language, and we don't rely on online outreach as much. And actually, I always advocate to weigh the person to person input more heavily than online outreach because it's so much more labor intensive. You know, for a lot of processes, a consulting firm could release, you know, an online survey and get 400 responses in English, and you know, they might release the same survey and get, you know, 5 responses in Chinese. So it really takes that kind of dedicated energy to go out and get that input and to really kind of cross that digital divide. Tokenization, you know, I think when public planning processes come together, there's oftentimes kind of one equity voice or one group representing communities of color. So I think that's another kind of pitfall I really want to call out is, you know, not having just one group represent a community, but to avoid that kind of tokenization. And then I guess finally, I really believe that budgets are moral documents, and that systematic change is needed. So the amount of resources that's spent on community engagement reflects kind of the values that you want to bring to the work. So, you know, community engagement is not free, so that really needs to be written into the public budgets to really kind of guide the work. Any questions?
Yeah, Duncan, this is Carly, actually. And can you talk a little bit more about the digital divide, especially with like texting and phone usage?
Yeah.
Just explain a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, you know, just some recent examples, like Carly mentioned, I'm on the Vision Zero task force for Portland, and, you know, we did crowdsourcing for dangerous intersections in Portland, and there was an app that you could download, and I guess kind of unsurprisingly to me, all the dangerous intersections happen to be downtown from crowdsourcing, but if you look at the data, you know, the most dangerous intersections are all in East Portland. You know, it's just that folks in East Portland don't download apps and, you know, mark dangerous intersection. That's just, you know, part of, I don't know, working in East Portland lower income neighborhood. So yeah, I think the digital divide is real when it comes to working in kind of like lower income neighborhoods where people don't have access to you know, technology as much, and also there's also a whole kind of different set of media that communities use. So when we, do more communicating with like the Chinese American community, for example, folks are on WeChat. So they might have phones, but they use a different messaging program or different text program that, you can text in Chinese and just like everyone uses. So just really kind of knowing how to tap into those networks and what, programs to use is really valuable. But just, for example, like the Chinese internet is completely different from, the internet in the Western world. So I think if you're going to rely on online outreach, it's more nuanced, and you kind of just got to know where to go, basically. Does that make sense?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on then. Okay, so so I kind of went through kind of a slate of challenges and issues that we've come across a lot in community engagement. So, what are the tools in the toolkit to improve community engagement? So I think, at the heart of it, it's really, how do we put community at the decision-making table and fund them to be there? So I got some examples of, where that's worked well. So we worked with Metro and the Power Division Steering Committee, which is now the Division Bus Rapid Transit line that's coming through the neighborhood. So if you look at the map, it's just going, straight through the neighborhood on Division east-west. So we had a seat at the table, and normally steering committees like that are usually agency heads or electeds, but putting community there, we were able to really kind of bring a more direct community voice and actually hold out until we got the necessary kind of mitigation measures in place. So along with the transit line, we're getting 350 to 650 units of housing in East Portland along Division. So that was kind of an outcome of having East Portland groups kind of at the decision-making table. The J District itself is also a neighborhood prosperity initiative, so we're a micro-urban renewal area, and the community actually controls the tax increment that's generated. So, it's a departure from traditional URAs where oftentimes that money was kind of unintentionally fueled gentrification and displacement because a lot of that money was given to private developers. But, in our newer model, the community actually controls the dollars, and the dollars flows directly to the J District for community reinvestment. So that's a good example of kind of community control over public dollars. Investing in language outreach and deprioritizing online outreach is something I had discussed. And again, just kind of really building stronger direct relationships with community groups is really valuable, both for community groups to know who and when to talk to, but also for agency folks to learn what the community really needs. So some strategies that we've employed at APANO. When we started our place-based work with our HEAL initiative, we really started with a community visioning process. So we worked on the livable lens plan, which probably can share, and also the J District vision. So we don't wait until things are happening at the agency level and then coming to the neighborhood for kind of approval. Through these kind of processes, we really convene different community groups and ask them about what they want to see done, and then we bring that directly to the agency, and that kind of guides our advocacy. So when we did this visioning, 3 years ago now in the J District, our community, in both the Chinese, Vietnamese, Russian, Spanish, and English-speaking communities all kind of agreed that we wanted to see safer streets, to really prioritize walkability and safety, to bring more parks and green space to the neighborhood, and to have a community center. So that's really kind of been our our long-term goals, and that's where we've really brought, agencies in to help us accomplish these. So right now we're building an affordable housing complex. We're building a community center. We've got a commitment to build a park and bring, a deeper tree planting process to the neighborhood. And we've got a number of traffic safety improvements that have been built or are being built now. So, the district's under construction, and that's really a result of kind of the visioning that we did first. That really kind of guides how public expenditures are done. So we also build broad coalitions to achieve community goals. We're the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon, so we organize primarily with Asian Pacific Islanders, but we live in a really diverse community, so we have to really build strong relationships with other community groups and other agencies, and really kind of work together to win kind of the neighborhood changes that we want to see. And it's not really just an Asian Pacific Islander thing. I think safe streets benefit everyone in the neighborhood. So that's kind of how we have to build that kind of coalition. We also set really achievable short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. So like a new bus rapid transit line might be a 5-year project because construction doesn't start until 2020. So like, how do we keep people engaged? Well, we kind of build short-term successes. So one of the shortest things that we've done is we had a J District night market, which brought 25,000 people to the neighborhood, and really kind of highlighted our local business community, and it was a great story, and really kind of engaged the neighborhood. So things like building a community garden, which we did our first year, and launching the night market are short-term goals that are really visible, and you kind of really build credibility, and we're able to kind of layer on longer-term processes building upon those short-term wins. So we're not talking about something that happens in 2020, but we're doing stuff every year that's a visible difference, and just really taking advantage of the lower hanging fruit, like building a garden or planting trees and things like that. Finally, we want to hold ourselves accountable to the agencies, the politicians, and just holding everyone accountable to that community vision. When we do those visionings, we actually have a public rollout where we invite our electeds, and they all come and basically receive this public document, and we all kind of commit to working together on it to make that vision a reality. Is there any questions right now? No? Okay. Well, this is just a slide on kind of one of the visionings that we talked about. So held in 5 languages, really focused on the built environment, but education and transportation, and it culminated in this. We really believe that those most impacted by the issues should be the ones that help shape the solutions, and this approach really requires kind of year-round base building. So here's a picture of our youth group, and they can be activated for different engagement activities, but we work with them year-round, not just when we need to do like a listening session, to build skills and capacity, and they just have a good time because there's always food and games and stuff like that. So we have different kind of organizing programs. So we work with Chinese parents, we work with Vietnamese parents, we work with Asian youth, and we work with Pacific Islander youth, and we work with Marshallese parents in Salem. So we really work more deeply in those communities, and kind of work with them on skills building, and they'll work on campaigns that they've prioritized themselves. So our youth program last year really wanted to work on bringing ethnic studies to their school curriculum. So they created this campaign that was completely youth-led to to do that. So they won last spring and are actually working now on kind of a curriculum and design of ethnic studies in all Portland public high schools, which is going to start in 2018, I think. So here's kind of the youth, and they've got obvious like school board targets that they want to influence, and all the school board members ended up voting yes on ethnic studies. But while they were working on ethnic studies, for example, they actually also had focus groups on neighborhood transportation, school boundary changes, and kind of like the housing their families would like to live in. So it wasn't like as huge a lift convening these groups, because these groups already meet regularly and are actually learning about this stuff already. So they were able to provide some excellent feedback to these agencies. Are you also there?
Yes. Yep, we're here.
Strategy 2 is leadership development. So we have 2 kind of formal leadership development programs. And one is kind of like for a statewide level, and then one is for a neighborhood level. And folks will go through this kind of cohort and learn skills, grow their analysis, and build confidence to really kind of engage in decision making. And the goal is to really get, to get folks onto various kind of decision-making tables. So we've got folks appointed to the Division Steering Committee, Division BRT Steering Committee, like city task forces, ODOT Region 1 Commission, Area Commission on Transportation, different budget advisory committees, and various nonprofit boards. So we always think that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So that's why we really invest heavily in leadership development. Our third strategy is cultural work. So we really believe that cultural work and placemaking are kind of the future of community engagement. And we have a kind of a formal program that brings creative placemaking to our neighborhood. So we'll fund a series of permanent or temporary art projects in the neighborhood, and we have this art plan to kind of guide the work. So I think one of the biggest strengths of cultural work is kind of bringing new voices to the table, and it helps kind of influence public policy. So like on this slide, you can see kind of a poster for Division Street Stories, which is a hip-hop open mic night kind of in our community space. And everyone came and like wrote basically rap songs about access to bus lines or housing. So it was an opportunity to kind of lift those voices. We also shot, one of the art projects was a documentarian who shot a documentary about local businesses and what they thought of a transit line. And the BRT project was initially going to jog down on 82nd. So this artist went and interviewed and shot video of every business owner along 82nd. And there was just some really powerful testimony. One of the business owners, her family had been here in the neighborhood for 70 years now, and she was in tears, being like, "I don't want to leave this neighborhood." And we showed that video to decision makers, and it really kind of influenced, along with kind of engineering issues, the decision not to go down 82nd. It was just because of kind of a community support that we were able to tease out that spoke out against having that project. Yeah, cultural work, it's about bringing new voices to the table. Oftentimes folks that wouldn't go to like a traditional agency-led design charrette with dot exercises and things like that, they'll go to an art exhibit or art project to also provide kind of new feedback. It's about shifting hearts and minds, and it's creating a new neighborhood narrative, which is something that we really wanted to. So, working in East Portland on 82nd, we've got a lot of negative narratives from the past. We've been called like felony flats and other names. So, how do we kind of combat that narrative and really kind of highlight and lift up the really positive community assets and communities that we have here. So I think that's all kind of one of the strengths of cultural work. Do you have a question?
Duncan, you mentioned or on the previous slide there was a piece about the art projects. Can you talk a little bit how those were funded?
Yeah, so we are part of Transportation for America's Cultural Corridors Collaborative. So the Kresge Foundation made a pretty sizable investment in 3 cities, so Portland, Nashville, and San Diego, because we're all getting new bus rapid transit lines. And they really wanted to find out more about how placemaking could, impact kind of decision making and help kind of with the cultural resilience of each kind of corridor. So that's how it was initially funded. And now we're kind of leveraging other arts funding from like RAC and hopefully the National Endowment of the Arts. We have an application now, and hopefully the Trump administration doesn't kill the NEA. But there's other public funders out there that'll invest in this type of placemaking work. Metro is actually launching a new placemaking program, so I think that'll be an opportunity for people in the Portland metro area to apply for probably later this year, actually. So just different arts funders out there, and a lot of energy right now nationally around creative placemaking because it has so many kind of benefits to it, as I've kind of highlighted in this slide. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm just ending with a quick case study that kind of like ties some of the better practices together. So again, talking about this corridor, the Division Transit Project now will connect downtown Gresham with downtown Portland and kind of go through our neighborhood. So construction begins in a couple of years, but we've really been engaged in planning for this big project coming through. So kind of 2 big innovations on the public agency end was expanding who was going to be on the steering committee. So instead of only having elected officials and agency leaders, we brought in educational institutions. So Mount Hood Community College and Portland Community College had seats. Housing advocates had seats. Transit writers had a seat. Neighborhood associations had a seat. So just like expanding who was at the table really brought about some better outcomes, which I'll go into. And then we did just a lot deeper multicultural community outreach and youth outreach, and those were funded. The Metro actually won a national award for kind of their outreach that they facilitated in this process.
Oh no. Okay, well, he is wrapping up. Good thing he's almost done. We'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions? You can chat them in the chat box. Duncan? Oh my gosh. Okay. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will do my best to answer them, and I'm going to try to get Duncan back on the line again. But please feel free to voice anything, any questions or concerns, and I'll do my best to answer them. Does anybody have any thoughts? Okay, well, I will send out this link to this recording and the slides with some notes and Duncan's contact information and mine. And this is my last week as Heal Cities coordinator. I will be moving to San Diego in a couple weeks to start a new job and join my partner who lives down there. So Serena Boston-Ashby is our Chief Operating Officer, and she will be working on the Heal Cities campaign, and we are hiring a new staff member. So they will be joining the team in April and will be in contact. But again, please feel free to follow up with me on any questions or concerns, thoughts you have on this presentation. And I will do my best to pass those on to Serena or answer them in the meantime. But thank you all for being on here today, and you know, good luck with your community engagement. And I'll be staying in touch with the Heal Cities campaign, of course. But I look forward to hearing about all the good things you are doing and working with Serena to make sure that she works with you. And that is it. Thank you again, and we will talk soon. Okay, bye.